Guys, and welcome to my channel today with a new budget deck profile. Well, to be fair, we don't really know how budgety it's going to be because I think prices are spiking a little bit with Fortune Lady Every right now. That being said, the set isn't out yet. That comes out this week, so we'll see. I'm predicting the price will probably go down by a lot because the deck is not as great as it could be. I mean, I feel like the deck has real potential. I think you can play this deck like halfway competitively if you're actually putting in the right side deck cards and stuff. There's a lot that you can do with this deck, and this deck has plays and has an insane amount of draws. I'll talk you over my first try on this deck. I'll probably try to make this deck a little bit better, work out a little bit. This is just me playing with the thought of this deck for now. It's more of a go first turn variant here right now because triple solemn judgment is well, it's quite helpful, I'll tell you that. And there's a lot of stuff that you can do with this deck. But I'll explain you why I chose certain cards, what you maybe could play as well, how you maybe could get the deck count, like the number of the cards in the deck, a little bit down to 40 for the consistency. But that being said, I'll just start it off. I run one Fortune Lady Dark. I thought about maybe cutting it, but it actually helps pretty easily to go into the Synchro Monster in general, into the higher level Synchro Monster, since you can summon this easily off of the Fortune Lady Light. So I thought this can be quite nice. Plus, special summoning one Fortune Lady from your graveyard by running over a monster in battle is quite neat as well, especially if you want to keep your opponent a little bit down the first turn. So if you get that out second turn, then special summon one from your graveyard, which there should be one. Can be quite a neat effect, so I felt like running this card is actually pretty neat in the deck. It's not mandatory, but I felt like there's definitely a reason why I run it, and it worked out for me so far. Plus, it's a monster with at least 2,000 attack points. Comparison to most of the other ones, kind of hard. I don't run the Earth one, I think, because, well, only thing that it does is do 400 burn damage and is a 2,400 beat stick, so I felt like, nope, thank you. Triple Fortune Lady Water, well, this card is quite important. I run at 3 since I run Pot of Desires, and I want to be able to get this card out once or twice at least, so having a higher count in the deck can be super neat. Plus, there's another thing with like an extra deck monster I'll talk about in a second. This card is not once per turn. This card draws you 2 cards. Very, very strong. What this card can do. Technically, you could go into rank 4th with this deck, but since the card limits you to synchros, you don't see any Xyz cards in this deck. Obviously, you can make your extra deck how you want it to be. And on triple Fortune Lady Wind, I thought about maybe cutting it to 2, but thing is that I kind of want to have that much Fortune Ladies in the deck that you can always normal summon 1, like that you have your starting hand contains mainly 1, so Fortunately Calling isn't a dead card. Yes, Future Visions can search you a card like a Fortune Lady monster, but you mainly want to search Fortune Lady Calling with Future Vision, or even if you're good enough, then Fortune Lady Rewind as well. So I felt like you want to have at least like 50 monsters. I feel you could go for like 14, 13 if you want to, but from what I tested this, I feel like that was a pretty neat monster card. I feel like 14 doesn't make too much of a difference if you want to cut one of them, but that can be pretty strong against back row decks in turn 3. But the problem with this, since you want to go first, you don't have much back row removal during your opponent's turn, so you have to do this in side decking, like Twin Twister or the trap card, possibly the the Heavy Storm Duster or something. That's probably cards that we want to side in then for those kind of scenarios, because this is more of like we're stopping your opponent from doing a lot of monster and link and somewhat shenanigans right here. Double Fortune Lady Fire, only double because this effect triggers mainly from being special summoned anyway, and you can pop a card like a monster. That is okay, that is not bad. Being special summoned out, you can do this easily with light, which is quite neat, and especially with Fortune Lady Calling. So that is what you basically can do. It's not super great, but the effect for Fortune Ladies is quite nice because you inflict damage to your opponent equal to a monster's attack, which can help you OTK and finish the game. So I feel like this card is okay-ish in the deck. Fortune Lady Light, basically the somewhat playmaker of the deck, I guess. This card helps you building up stuff like getting your Fortune Lady Water out of the deck, going into your tuner, summoning Lady Fire, getting your Law of Resources, Spellbook of Knowledge. Works as well with Future Visions, so that is a card that you have to keep in mind. Fortunately Past sets up for your Fortune's Future. It's kind of annoying that a lot of the Fortune Lady cards, the spell trap cards, aren't really called Fortune Lady, so you can't search them, which makes a lot of the cards kind of useless. This sets up for any of your synchro plays, banishes cards if you want to utilize the Fortune Lady Rewind. So in total, this card is actually pretty neat. Triggers Fortune Lady Light as well. This is, well, if you banish her from the field, I guess. So that's that. 1-for-1 because you either want to go into your tuner or you want to go into Fortune Lady Light to establish a board. Also for 1-for-1, you want to have enough monsters in hand. You could cut the card, but it gives you extra board presence, so I really like it. Spellbook of Knowledge, well, works pretty well with this card. In general, as a good draw engine, as a good deck thinning engine. If you only want to run 2 Spellbook of Knowledge, I guess you could cut the secrets, because how much sense does it make to deck thin if you could just leave them out and have like 40 cards plus the Pot of Desires kind of conflicts with this a little bit. So if you don't want to play them, then you're probably at 40 cards and then you should be fine. You don't want to run triple because you can only activate it once per turn, and you draw, if you're having a good hand, you can draw a lot, and then you would rather want to draw into things that actually help you destroying your opponent's board or setting up your own board rather than breaking with too many of those, since you already have a lot of draw engines. Fortunately, Calling is a card that you, even though you can only use it once per turn and it's searchable, you want to draw as often as possible because that can give you access to Lady Water, to Light and Past. So this can set up a lot of plays. Pot of Desires, just adding more draw power for Go First deck. You could go for Extravagance, but Extravagance doesn't let you draw any other cards, and that would be kind of, it's not as good, I feel. It doesn't work out that much. Yeah, Desires has a little bit of a drawback, but still having 6 cards in the starting hand, I think that's pretty good. Double Fortune's Future, I play it at 2 because thing is, there is a chance that you can't get it off. Like, you need a little bit of a specific setup, like let's say having Future Visions and normal summoning a monster, or banishing one with Fortune Lady Past. You will mainly get it off, but there's chances where you don't, and I felt then if you want to really use your normal summon just to draw 2 cards and then maybe don't have enough plays, not in this variant. There's a variant where probably if you run more trap cards and focus more on this kind of stuff, then that could be helpful, but in this variant I felt like it's not as much. Already talked about Spell of Secrets. You definitely need Called by the Grave. This deck dies off to Ash Blossom like super hard, and even Impermanence and Effect Veiler, which this can't stop Impermanence, so you're kind of screwed. But hand traps, this deck, yeah, it falls apart, because if you don't get your Fortunately Calling out or the effect of Lady Water, then you don't get Rolling. If you don't get Rolling, you basically die off. Fortune Vision is quite neat. I wish this effect would protect from targeting, because then actually you could do stuff with this card in your turn. It just protects from destruction, which is would be better. I think this deck could be really good if this actually protected from targeting, because then you could play around like certain hand traps like Impermanence and Veiler a little bit, but like this you cannot. So Searching, I feel like Fortunately Calling and other things, plus kind of keeping out a little bit while your opponent can't super damage you or DK you possibly, is still good enough. Would be good if that would search Future Vision as well, which it does not. You don't see any Metaverse or Terraform in here, because I felt like you had enough draw engines to go to this card. But if you want to, you can obviously play Terraforming, maybe Splash, and I've seen people putting in Mystic Mine. I felt like I wanted to create this deck over the limits of Mystic Mine, so I didn't put it in. But sometimes it's quite neat if you can actually get rid of Future Visions because you don't want it anymore. Then yeah, another Terraforming or Metaverse maybe can be quite neat. I run one Fortunately Rewind. It can help you OTK, it can help you go into link plays. It's not a bad card since it's searchable. Playing at 1 won't hurt you too much. Double Crackdown. Crackdown is actually pretty neat in this deck, because if you disrupt your opponent doing his early combos, he might not get anything good off of that and have to pass the turn to you. And then you already have one probably lower level monster to go into Synchros, because this deck does not keep you from doing all those kind of things. So that can be quite helpful actually, since this is a synchro based deck somewhat. And Solemn Judgment, protecting stuff like your Future Visions, protecting stuff technically like your Fortune Vision as well. But in general, it's just a good disruption, and the life point pay costs don't matter too much, I felt like. For the extra deck, 1 level 8, I feel like this is the best one, because you can't get out Savage Dragon with a Link monster really, so it doesn't make sense to really play it. And if you have like want to play Omega, for example, you can do this. Omega could be quite helpful. Other than that, I want to keep it budgety, so I went for this. Omega is still somewhat expensive if you're looking at the other cards. I decided Black Rose Moonlight Dragon, if stuff like Thunder Dragons become a thing and they summon actually higher monsters, this could be a good first turn thing to go into it, making your opponent kind of play around this a little bit. Black Rose Dragon, board nuke, can be helpful, can set up some plays. The FA Dawn Dragster, if you're playing against a deck that has to use some spell trap cards, like this deck, for example, if the deck is depending on this can come in handy. I play double Fortune Lady every, but you don't have to, especially if the price stays up that high. Probably you could just cut one of them. But the card is actually kind of neat, plus it's a pretty high attack point monster for a level 7 that you just can't splash out like this. Plus you can bump up its attack by using the effect of Fortune Lady Past if you happen to have another one on board. Kind of neat. Thing is that has barely ever happened is the whole like during your standby phase you can banish a monster from your opponent. Barely ever has happened because either they run over your monster because they get a turn through, or they get no turn through, so they don't have any monster or anything that they can do. So it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. One card that I enjoy in this deck is the White Aura Dolphin, because first of all, it kind of helps you OTK in a little bit. Level 6 isn't too hard to get. Plus, this card, first of all, you can, when it's sent to the graveyard, you can banish one other water monster from your graveyard, special summon it back. What is Fortunately Water? Water. Wow, that was in the name. But also it banishes it, which sets up stuff like Fortune's Future. Oh God, those names are so hard to say if you see them a lot. And the Fortune Lady Rewind. So I felt like this card was pretty nice. Plus, if you run stuff like Coral Dragon and Bryanak, can be super neat. Those are all cards to like get you another play during your second turn once you've interrupted your opponent possibly enough to actually go into stuff. Ally of Justice Cataster felt like the best level 5 synchro in this deck if you don't want to go for IP, which you can. It's not super bad. It's a spellcaster as well, so technically if you want to play something else, that's quite neat. Ball Load Dragon, I feel like is the cheapest one. If you can afford Ball of Sword, put Ball of Sword in. That is quite a good card as well. You can make this card somewhat easy if you get stuff like Fortune Lady Rewind off. You can actually put up quite a big board even without using the Fortune Lady Calling, but once you use this, can't do any of this shenanigans anymore. Decor Talker, cheap link 3 that helps you OTKing because you boost up attack points with low level monsters I have on the board that point to this card points to. Nightmare Phoenix, Nightmare Cerberus, good cards in general, removal, and a generic link 2. Could run cards like Amades or IP if you want to go for a little bit of a more expensive kind of card, then IP is fine, because this deck can do quite well with Monster Reborn as well, since you could get the Fortunately Water effect off. Well, you could run a Shark Fortress, but yeah, I mean, it would help you really much OTK, and it's not that hard to put actually on board, but I felt like it's not worth playing it, to be completely honest, but it would maybe help you OTK a little bit and save your monsters possibly in your opponent's turn from being attacked into. Could play a third Spellbook of Knowledge if you wanted to, or a third Future Vision. Could play Terraforming. If you decide to go for more of a Spellbook engine, then Spellbook of Life is quite neat, but since you have to reveal one other Spellbook card in your hand, this card isn't as good. If you didn't have to do this, but could just use the effect, then this card would be amazing, since you have to banish stuff and you can special summon stuff back, so you could trigger things like Lady Water. This card will actually come in handy. So this is basically my deck profile. Hope you enjoyed it. There will be other things coming. I'll actually try to possibly, not quite sure how I'm going to do this, but there was a thing that I wanted to try out is invoked Fortune Ladies, because they all have different attributes. There's a light one that is always quite important for invoked, I guess, and there's a fire one, which is quite important for invoked ones. So that could be a thing. Plus they banish stuff, so that with a few with their fusion card. So this can be a neat one. Technically, not quite sure how this works out with like Fortune Lady Calling though. So I'll try this out. Hope you enjoy this deck profile. It's somewhat of a good deck. It's quite cheap. Let's try it out. Hey, leave a like, subscribe, tell me what you think about the deck, and I hope you're having a good day.